Welcome to Om on the Range, where we share the practice of meditation, the wisdom of Western Buddhism, and the refuge of our community. Whether you are new to meditation or a longtime practitioner, committed or curious, this offering is here to share solutions, stories, and support. Happiness and better health are available to everyone. It just takes practice. This is Om on the Range. Greetings. This is episode number 33 of Om on the Range. Here we cover Western Buddhism, meditation, and the power of community. Those are big topics, and we are a small podcast, but it seems to be working well for us so far. I'm your host. My name is Whit. That is spelled W-H-I-T in case you want to fire off an email and complain. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you joined us. This week, Tim Behrens joins us as co-host. Tim, welcome back. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, it's always great having you on. I've told this story before, but you're a big part of why we have a podcast. So our listeners should appreciate you and or blame you, whatever they feel most appropriate with. But thank you very much for doing that. So right or wrong, we generally do not focus too much on specific steps of the Eightfold Path. However, you and I are both experiencing some changes in our careers right now, and the Eightfold Path mentions specifically the importance of right livelihood as we progress. So what I thought we would do today is just talk a little bit about where we are, what we're both seeing and experiencing with these career changes, and how our practice, how Western Buddhism, how our communities have supported and brought these changes about. So if you're good with that, let's go ahead and dive right in. Do you want to start and tell everybody just a little bit about where you are with your career right now?
Yeah, that sounds great. Well, some people in community probably know the last couple of years I've been on a bit of a journey, and that I had been in IT for almost 17 years, but continually felt myself being drawn back toward my psychology background, and had taken the chance to go back to school at this later point in life and learn to become a hypnotherapist. And I was doing that professionally for most of last year, and really wonderful experience and journey. And also perhaps didn't really know where things were going. It felt like more of a chaotic kind of world and space that I was in. I had learned to become an effective hypnotherapist, something I'm really proud of and still enjoy to this day. I had not learned how to become an effective marketer, an effective administrative person, social media person, networking, all of these things that I had not really learned or accounted for. So I was in a place of doing something that I passionately believed about and was excited about, and also in a bit of a place of struggle as to how to have that support me monetarily. And so just recently I made that decision to go back into my former life. And this is an interesting point, which we'll probably get into, but I say go back, but I realize that there really is no such thing, that I'm going forward into a previous career with a whole set of experiences and new knowledge and new understanding of myself. And so it's been a really interesting journey. And when we think about the practice too, I know that I've been able to witness in myself a lot of interesting things going on in this assuredness of having a new routine, of having a little bit more of a stable income, meeting some of those hierarchy of needs kinds of things that I've been able to see internally how I feel differently. You know, I had a moment in Sangha at the meditation service a couple of weeks ago where I was sitting in the same room with the same people, ready to listen to the Dharma talk and meditate and all of these things, and noticing how dramatically different it felt. And so as this reflection point for me of like, if nothing situationally has changed here, except for me and how I feel about what's coming next, then that's really a powerful testament to how much we are kind of co-creating our reality. That it's not just about the situations, it's about how we perceive them and how we perceive ourselves in them. It's been a lot of reflection. It's been a lot of trying to ask those questions of who am I? What am I doing? Why am I doing it? how much of my identity do I wrap up in how I pay my bills versus the things that I continue to be passionate about? So that's kind of where I'm at. And what about you?
Well, a couple things you hit on there that we're certainly going to circle back to, but one of the first things that came up for me while you were speaking was that we all have to make some decisions about how we spend our time and where we're going to put our focus. And Western Buddhism is a little bit unique in the approach. We don't have thousands of years of tradition. So we're kind of developing this as we go. And so you understand that you have to make money, you have to support yourself. And you also understand that when you can do that, you do feel more positive. You can support other people as well. You just feel better, right? But it's also interesting in the Western world that I think it's essential that you look at what you're doing and peel it back a little bit and understand that, okay, I'm not helping the poor and I'm not saving the planet. But what I am doing is I'm bringing awareness and acceptance and patience and compassion to whatever is in front of me. And most of us started a career long before we became interested in Western Buddhism or meditation, for that matter, or had a community that supported us, at least in these endeavors. So it's almost one of those things where you have to. This is always true with life, but it's when you're riding on the train and you're riding on the front of it and you're putting down the track as you go. It's kind of like that with a career, in that you've got to please a couple of different masters. And at first that seems like it's contradictory. And then you realize, hey, I bring, again, that awareness and that acceptance to whatever I'm doing. This is part of my practice. And I don't get caught up so much in maybe what the end game is. Now, there are some exceptions, right? You really can't be a hitman and profess to being a Buddhist. Really, you probably can't have much spiritual life at all as a hitman, but I know I didn't when I was a hitman. So that was another really long answer. I think we're only going to get to about 3 points the way we're talking.
Yeah, it seems, but it's good things to think on. I know in my own journey, this is going to sound like I'm going off track a little bit, but we'll hopefully bring it back. I know in my own journey that I've learned a lot about how discontentment, maybe suffering, is a dissonance between what we expect and what we want to find and what actually is, right? In that sense of like, I know that I have these things I'm very passionate about, and I want to be able to say that that's how I'm making my living. And yet I know that there are these real world practical things going on. And I'm trying to give myself grace to say, well, I'm doing what I need to do to respond to these circumstances, this moment in time. And so, like, I can say, if I'm spending my life thinking about the ideal, then I'm really not present for what is. And if I'm not present for what is, then I have no way of working with it in a way that's going to make me happy, right? So, and that is for me where the practice comes in a little bit of having gratitude for so many things, but also being able to presence that. I'm trying to start every morning by thinking of 3 things I'm thankful for. I'm trying to end every day by thinking of 3 things that went well. And in that sense, I'm kind of training myself and my brain to look for those things.
Right.
And if it was always the ideal or the expectation that I was looking at versus the reality of where I'm at, I would constantly be finding reasons to feel unhappy or discontent or like I was somehow failing. And I know that we hear in Sangha sometimes that expression of, we are human beings, not human doings. That idea that, is there a way for me to decouple the things that I need to do to exist in this 3D world with these 3D needs and really allow myself to be present for life unfolding, whatever experience that is there something here that I can work with in a way that I can find stability or security or ideally even moments of joy, and to not even attach to those, to just know that this is my story unfolding. And you mentioned compassion, and I would also add self-compassion, because there's definitely a voice in me that might want to say that in some way I failed because I haven't reached that ideal, or it doesn't look like what I want it to be when I get there. So, in that sense, if I'm present for what is and it's all just unfolding and I am a human being here to witness and experience it, suddenly I have a different palette to work with. And I think that is where the practice comes in, just presence, awareness, acceptance, self-compassion.
Right. And I don't know that anybody else is going to get this out of this 6 or 8 minutes so far. But I would tell you that since we've had this conversation, my understanding of right livelihood has changed dramatically in that we're not talking about the importance of what you do as much as we're talking about the importance of how you do it.
Mhm.
And so, because I've always read that, I will tell you that I've read the Eightfold Path. I'm not going to attempt to recite it for you. I'm not that kind of Buddhist, but yeah, for that, I always thought, oh well, I've got to have a job where I thought that in the back of my mind, even though I tried to, really, I was going to say try to live differently. I didn't try to. I really didn't have a choice, right? We have to go make money. Like I said, we've already started our careers before we found Western Buddhism, at least in my, I'm sure in yours as well, in your
Mhm.
experience. So what's changed for me just in this discussion is like I said, what it doesn't matter what you do, it's how you do it. It doesn't matter what the score is. It doesn't matter how much money you make. Again, there some exceptions, you bet. If you're harming people, if you're miserable, that's a good sign that you're in the wrong career. But a lot of times, again, that can be corrected if you have that right focus, that right livelihood. You bring that yourself and you do the best you can and you're kind and you try to be a positive force as well as you can. And then that allows you to spread and share that compassion in a environment that is not only known for those sort of things. So thank you. That's a great lesson. And you get at least half credit. So that's cool.
Yeah, there's something interesting too in like going through, you and me both have just gone through this pretty big change because we spend a lot of our time in the work world. And I feel like there are these opportunities for me. I'm having all of these existential questions coming up. Who am I? Why am I doing what I'm doing? What does any of it mean? How do I integrate the things that I was trying to do into where I'm at now? There's all of these questions, and part of me could see that. I could call that almost an existential crisis. But if I frame
Yeah.
it differently, if I'm present here for it in the now, I also see it as an opportunity to really maybe decouple from some of those things to say this is life unfolding, and how much of what I identify with and I bring with me into any space, including Sangha, how much of that is actually me and how much of that is a narrative that I'm telling myself. And if I'm telling myself a narrative, is it one that's actually supportive or is it one that's creating that dissonance and that struggle? Because I could tell two different stories right now. One of them would be that I tried to do something that I was really passionate about and it didn't work out. And another would be that I invested in myself for 2 years. Wonderful things. I've worked with so many incredible people and helped some of them make their lives better. And then I'm bringing all of that knowledge and all of those tools into what comes next. And I can pretend that I know what comes after this, but also it may be that there could be a point in time where sometime down the road it all makes sense again. That these pieces in life are lining up in a way that they're preparing me for something that I had not conceived of. And I always love when I'm asking for things. I'm a little bit of a manifestation guy, but when I'm asking for things and I'm practicing gratitude, I might be saying this or something better, because there might be something in store for us in our journeys that we haven't even comprehended.
So let me hit on a couple of things because I've experienced that as well. I couldn't help but thinking while you were talking about the 2 years where you invested in yourself, that not only did you grow and see some real progress, for lack of better word, but you also helped launch a pretty mediocre podcast. So that's also pretty impressive. But I was going to say that when you start a new job, and I think we both experienced this, in a lot of ways, it was exactly what we wanted. It's what we wished for. I know for me, it's something that I kind of pursued for 5 or 6 years. And then once I got it, there was a lot of anxiety, especially the first couple of weeks, because it's like you get what you wish for. Now, what do you do with it? And can you fit in here? Is it really what you want? And all that. And it is. But in your mind, I immediately, there was more work, there was a lot of travel, still is, but I didn't know these people. It's a pretty quick dating cycle before you say I do. So there was a lot to learn and you want to figure it out, but you also want to fit in. You want to show that you've got the abilities that they sign up for. And it helped me to stop and remember, hey, one, this is what I wanted. Two, let's not talk ourselves into a bad place because we're a little pressure. It's a little different. There's that feeling to pull back. But also, let's lean into the path. Let's make sure that we're not the same person. This is what we want. We know how to be calm. We know how to be aware. We know how to be accepting. Let's bring who we are to this and understand that it is a new
Mhm.
opportunity and I'm a new person and it's not too big for me. It's a good opportunity, but it's not the end of the road. So I was just curious, have you seen or felt the same thing?
I would say so. Even wanting to scroll back to what you just said about, I'm losing my thought, but that idea that the skills that we've acquired show up in different ways. I mean, the idea of launching a podcast, if it had not been for my journey in IT, which never really brought a lot to my heart space, honestly, it wasn't something that I was super passionate about. But there was a point in time where I found that all of those skills I had acquired over the years were creating new opportunities for me to do things that I did love, like participating in this podcast or setting up audio recording systems where I could record my music and share it with the world. And ultimately being able to, I find a lot of joy in being able to bring that technical knowledge into Sangha to be able to help people do the things that they want. And again, this is a narrative. I feel and I believe for myself that these things line up in a way that every now and then you have these mile markers in life where you can look back and say, oh, that's why this happened. But I can also believe that that may just be a story I'm telling myself. And it's a story that feels far more supportive than the alternative. It's a story that's about dealing with the things that life throws at you and being able to bring all of that knowledge and that wisdom and that time to bear to meet the challenges in the present as they are. And in that sense, it is really hard to decouple from what we do and how we identify ourselves. Inauthentic relating events will sometimes play that game where you just ask someone over and over again, who are you? Who are you? And they keep answering and you keep asking. And it's like, okay, I'm a father, someone in my middle age. I'm a brother, a sister, a son, whatever someone might say. And ultimately, our jobs get wrapped up in that too. But after you get through all of those labels and things, you eventually get to a point where it's like, wow, I really need to sit with this. Who
Yeah.
am I?
Yeah.
And I know that the practice would sometimes answer that of I'm the observer. I'm that consciousness that exists outside of all of this, that when I take a step back and I create space with my breath and focus and attention, there's something else there that's just witness. I'm witness to life unfolding. And there's a lot of compassion in that because if I can just witness, then there's not as much judgment about what's
Right.
right and wrong. It's
Right.
just experience.
You can shed some of that anxiety and some guilt or whatever those feelings are that aren't necessary. And again, if you don't recognize those negative forces, and maybe they're not negative, but whatever those forces are, if you don't spend some time with them and recognize them and kind of process them, they can be detrimental to what you're trying to get done, whether it's a relationship, whether it's work, whether it's your education, whatever it is. And I think it's also true that if you let it interfere with your relationships, it'll also interfere with your work. And also, it kind of spreads through your entire life. You're either aware of those forces and you're good with acknowledging them, or you're not. And it's a tough way to live if you're not.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's something that's coming up for me here too, which is just wanting to really acknowledge for myself and anyone else who might be listening that idea that there is that hierarchy of needs. That when we think about being in a spiritual community and having to practice, often we are in a place where we have those basic needs met. Someone who doesn't know where their next paycheck is coming from or doesn't know how they're going to put food on their table or even where they're going to sleep. When someone is in those situations, we don't really get to ask these existential, these bigger questions. We're really just in survival mode. And that idea of like allowing ourselves a little bit of grace to say, I think a lot of people are going through some very tumultuous, challenging times right now, and that it's okay to just be doing anything and everything we can to just get through our days as well. And that for me, that's where the Sangha comes in too, because those are not the kinds of things that we want to do alone. There's something really supportive just about being in community and hearing people normalize your experience and offer support and ask for help that you can give, all of those things that helps with some of that self-actualization, that meeting those needs that allow us to be in a place where we really can focus on a practice.
I noticed as I was transitioning, because there was never any downtime this time, but I've been through it before where you're in between jobs. And I noticed this time that my attitude towards this change was a little bit different, but also I was more aware of all the support that I got from not just our spiritual community, but a lot of people in my career. I'm going to call them my career sangha, although nobody's ever used that together before, I don't think. But, a lot of people were supportive of me and took the time to talk to me. Not people that I've talked to very often or anything like that, but just I felt that that support changed kind of how the whole process went. It also made me want to help people that were going through that as well, whatever that looked like, because, you know, it just made it simpler. It made it more human. And I think ultimately it helped in the way I presented myself. Again, I was in a weird spot because at the same time, I was pursuing a job that I always wanted, but I was also on the clock for losing the job I had. So it was a very weird process. And I just thought that both spiritually and through my work life and my family life, I just had so much support. And I think support is one of those things also where if you're open to it, it comes to you. Maybe like a lot of positive things. If you're open to it, and then I don't know if people can sense it, but I just felt that through this process, and it kind of made all the difference. It helped. It helped remove some of that anxiety. Um, and I agree with you. If somebody's going through this, it's very difficult to have a good, strong spiritual practice when you're trying to figure out, how am I going to pay for my car? Where am I going to live? And, it just feels bad. How are people going to look at me if I don't have a job?
Right.
And that's too bad, but it's true. And it's a tough thing to work with, although that's what we need to do with it. So, how was the transition for you? How did that feel?
Oh, it's been interesting, in the sense that I haven't had a regular schedule for the last 2 years. On one sense, I had a lot of flexibility, but in another, as an entrepreneur or someone who was trying to start a practice, there really wasn't time off. Either I was working or I was not working and feeling guilty about it because I knew there were things I needed to do to further my path. And so moving into more of this full-time work world again has been interesting because it is more regimented. There is more of a routine. I'm now back in a world where I'm around a lot of different people who think differently, who talk differently, who have different backgrounds, and noticing how I tend to live in a little bit of a bubble where I tend to surround myself with people who might be aligned in different ways or have similar interests and all of that. And so kind of going back into the bigger world is this idea of like, wow, there's a part of me that is excited. There's so many lessons and so many opportunities and diversity and being exposed to new ideas and different ways of being, different people, different pasts. And so, yeah, I'm excited about that. It is also I think that's a practice too, because it's challenging. Yeah. So I guess I just say it's been a lot of change and having the energy and the energetic resources for that has been a lot too. I'm taking lots of naps.
Well, and I get all that. I've had to prioritize things like getting rest, because I'm in the same boat. It's much more regimented. It moves at a much quicker pace than what I was. There's more responsibility, so my free time has certainly diminished. And when I do have time, like I said, it's more important now to make sure that I'm taking care of myself first and foremost. And most of the time, frankly, that means getting enough sleep because it's been a lot of travel. So it's hard. And again, it'll settle down. It already started to. You mentioned, having more face-to-face interaction with people that are maybe a little more different because work has different goals than your personal life. I think that's true for everybody. But I've enjoyed that. And it's that, we talk about how important it is to how you show up for things. And that generally is not as concrete as it is with a new job, where it is so important how you show up. Are you, it sounds silly, but it's a little stuff. Are you on time? Are you engaged? Are you as friendly as you can be without coming across as being some sort of stalker? Are you prepared, but also open and humble to what you're doing? Because there is that ego part that wants to show everyone, hey, I'm smart. You guys are lucky I'm here, all this stuff. But really, I think through the practice, we understand that, hey, let's just show up. Let's be here. Let's be open to what's put down, and let's be ready to jump in and help where we can. But it's been great to have that, but it's also exhausting, you know.
Yeah, one thing that I've noticed, even when we think about these big life changes that we go through in so many different ways, is that there is this opportunity to really check in and say, well, how have I changed? What am I bringing into this new situation? And I know that I've learned through authentic relating practices, and I know this is also in Buddhist teachings and what we talk about in Sangha, that idea that the world is really a reflection of what's happening internally for us. And so if I'm looking for gratitude and positive things, I will see that reflected in my experience. And also that idea that when I model what I want to find in the world, I will also find that reflected back to me. In an authentic relating, it would be that simple idea that if I allow myself a moment of vulnerability to share something that feels more personal, I'm implicitly giving someone else permission to do the same thing. And I find that suddenly the quality of my conversations and interactions changes. And so for me, one thing that has changed over the last few years is that when I am now in a workplace, I'm a little bit more me, where I'm not putting on a mask of this role that I'm playing. I'm more showing up with someone who has a skill set. But when I communicate, when I share, I'm not compartmentalizing the fact that I have a life and interests and beliefs and community and things that exist outside of that space. And by doing that, I'm finding that the nature of my interactions with others is opening up too. I'm learning more about the people I work with, and I'm hearing more stories, and I'm hearing more things that matter to them and getting to share more things that matter to me. So that's been a really interesting thing just to note and to reflect on, is that as I have changed and become more comfortable being me through authentic relating practices, I'm finding that even in these different spaces, I'm having richer interactions, and I'm excited for that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's interesting how many personal challenges have diminished for me because through practice I become more authentic. I do know when I started meditation practice, that was not one of the goals. But you realize as you give time to yourself to simply sit and be, what you're really doing is you're filling in that space, you're growing it, and you're becoming less your ego and more who you are. And so it gives you that opportunity, whether it's work or dating or whatever sort of relationships, including, frankly, those dangerous things, those things that, when you have to answer the question of, hey, am I enough? Can I do this? Should I be here? When you're authentic, you show up and it's like, I don't really care what happens. This is me. This is who I am. I'm here. So this must be where I'm supposed to be because here I am. So I'll just be authentic. I don't have to prove anything to anyone. I'll do the best I can because that's who I am. But it just relieves so much of that fear. And that is one of the things that drove me to having a practice and not wanting to pay for therapy. So do you find that to be true as well? I mean, you kind of hit upon that when you're talking, but that power of authenticity, just for me, not only does it make me feel more comfortable in the situation, but I think it also gives everybody else an opportunity to be authentic as well.
Well, I resonate so much with some of those questions, because there is, and it's been very prevalent in my life. It's something that I've had to work on, that voice of I'm too much or I'm not enough, or even going into new jobs and roles, that imposter syndrome that says someone's going to find out that I'm faking my way through life and that I'm not really an adult and I don't really know what's going on. And what an exhausting thing to try and wear the masks to appear that you are all of those things. And what we find in authentic relating practices too is like when someone shares those things that they've put walls up on around, those things that feel vulnerable, we often find that that's the point of connection. Like, it's like, oh, I'm not broken. I'm just human. I'm having a human experience, and other people are having this too. And we're all going around this world, walking on the same streets in the same places and not really talking about it. But when we do and we give it a voice, suddenly we find out that we're all more connected and having more of a shared experience than we even knew.
So, just real quick, doesn't it? It feels like a great place to grow this
Mhm.
new career. You have 10
Yeah.
seconds to expand on that. Go.
Yeah, I would say, when we start to look at the world and what's presented, whatever it is, new jobs, just life unfolding as the practice, suddenly there's this whole opportunity to learn and grow and, yeah, just be
Yeah.
human beings.
Yeah. I think if you have a practice and you have the ability to give yourself awareness and acceptance and patience, that naturally flows into the rest of your life. It also gives you the opportunity to make changes in your life, whether it's career or where you live or who you live with. You're authentic. You don't have to be scared. You go, and it doesn't really matter how it turns out because you did the best you could. You showed up and you didn't lose. You learned something or you gained something. So, well, Tim, congratulations on the new role. And thank you so much
Thank you.
for coming on and co hosting and sharing your wisdom and your candor with us. You're a great human being. You're a great friend. We would not have a podcast without you. Thank you so much.
I'm really grateful to be a part of it. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I also want to thank everyone for listening and remind you that if you want to leave comments or questions, you can do so on any of the platforms where you can find Om on the Range. You can also email us at omontherange@gmail.com. This is Whit with Om on the Range signing off and wishing you happy trails. Thanks to our Om on the Range production team for making this program possible, and to Mr. Brad Athey for composing and performing the original music. And to you, our listeners, thank you for being a part of this journey as we explore meditation, Western Buddhism, and the path towards a happier, healthier life. Remember, less suffering and more joy are available to everyone. It just takes practice. Until next time, stay grounded, stay kind, and keep finding peace in the simple, practical things. For all of us here at Om on the Range, happy trails.